beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing, and the old redemption story, and some sweet day I'll see. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was formless, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind, yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth, that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." And God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters of the sea, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over the wild animals of the earth, and over everything that creeps upon the earth." And so God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. May we pray. Father, may your word speak to us this day, and may you give us open ears that we might hear what you have to say to us. Lord, your word is the truth by which we live. May it illuminate us this day. Amen. You'll appreciate your preacher when he gets back. That's part of my task. Today's Father's Day, and I got up this morning, and I guess maybe some of us, on our mind, something about our fathers. There in my little cubby hole at the house, where I keep my computer and I do my work, on the wall hangs a diploma. Several. One is a diploma from Bethel College in McKenzie, Tennessee. When I started out in the ministry, my committee insisted that I get a college and seminary education before I would get ordained. You know, it's not a choice. So I enrolled in college, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it, and really didn't want to be there. And I did just enough to get by. My dad, all through those years I was going to school, encouraged me. All he had to do was just hint that I could drop out, and I would have been gone. But rather, he encouraged me. I only found out later on that, of course, it's expensive to go to college today. I don't see how middle-class families can afford to send their son or daughter to college or university. My dad went down to the bank, got a personal loan in order to help pay for my college expenses. When I finally graduated, got my diploma, I began to learn to appreciate education a little bit more. I got my diploma, and my dad and mom were there, and I said, "Dad, I want you to sign my diploma." On that diploma that's hanging on my wall is William Cottrell's signature, who was president, Raymond Burris, who was, I think, dean of students at that time, and then William Pettigo. Every time I look at that, even this morning, I remember the encouragement of my dad and how he made a sacrifice for me to get that education. Don't get me wrong, education, as far as college goes, is not for everyone. It doesn't make a person. But it does help in many instances, depending on what you want to do. So anyway, that's what I thought about, and maybe you two have some, thoughts or memories that came back to you. Something said or something done that was special. But anyway, that's what was on my mind. And of course, my dad's been gone for a number of years now. But I still miss him. Still miss Mom. The passage of Scripture we read from Genesis. The key to that passage is verse 26 and 27. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's where it began. God created the universe, the stars, the moon, the earth, all of the plants and the animals and everything that we see around us. God created all that, and then, as a kind of crown of His creation, He created an animal that was different. He created humankind. It says that He made these animals different. He created them male and female. Now we share characteristics with other parts of God's animal creation, but there's a big difference. God created the man and the woman to be different. He endowed within them the freedom of choice. All the other animals that God created had no real choice and acted and moved by instinct. God created an animal, and I hope you don't take offense at this, but biologically they say we are Homo sapiens. We share a part of the animal kingdom, but with a great difference. God endowed us with the ability to choose. All the other creatures, God gave us to be free moral agents in which we could either choose to love our Creator, or we could freely choose not to love our Creator. That was a big risk. We know the story. Adam and Eve later on chose the wrong path. And then there was the fall, and in that fall we find ourselves. But that's the way God created us. This was the first human family. God created that family, male and female. It was to complement one another. Male and females are not alike, you know. We are different physically, emotionally, psychologically. Men and women have their own distinct characteristics. And it created us in such a way that those characteristics of our lives complement one another. And that the best model for a family is to have that complementing difference in a loving relationship. That's the way God intended it at first. The model family. Today we see that there are different kinds of models. not just one man and one woman. Have you ever watched Sister Wives? I watched it once, I think. I don't think that would work. I don't think that would work. There are, again, different models, but again, God, I think, intended within creation for family and marriage to be one man and one woman, living in a loving relationship, thereby fulfilling that command to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Today, I would like to suggest that that fatherhood and motherhood begins most importantly at the birth of a child. In recent years, there have been studies in child development. And in those studies, they have come to the conclusion that the first 6 years of a child's life is the most important. I wouldn't have thought that myself. But again, that seems to be the conclusion that they come to. And that means that our work as fathers and mothers begins day one. The child is born, they begin to roll around a little bit, they begin to coo. Pretty soon they begin to crawl, and then they begin to walk. You know, and that's a different world. You better put rubber bands on your cabinets. That's what my grandkids do. They go for the cabinets. And of course, they continue to develop during those 6 years. The brain of a child, when they reach 6 years old, is the size almost of an adult. And by 6 years old, they have formed many habits and acquired many experiences during that time that will last them throughout their adulthood. In other words, a child can, first 6 years, if there is a traumatic event in that child's life, it's going to follow them. You believe that? I kind of think so. Now, I don't believe everything in child psychology. I told you about college education. I happened to go by my college professor's house one day to deliver a paper, and he taught child psychology. A little boy came to the door. The little boy kicked me in the shins. I was telling one of the other students about that. He said, I saw him when the kid was out there and took his bicycle out in the road. So Doc went out there and grabbed him up and spanked that bicycle. Now, there's a lot of things that I don't buy into. But I do believe that those first years in a person's life is certainly important. And they can either make or break a kid. I've seen the results of some of this, and I'm sure you have too. A kid that comes up in a dysfunctional atmosphere, kid that's abused emotionally or physically, they suffer those scars into their adulthood. So dads and moms' job began at day one. As a child develops a sense of identity. That's part of our work. Let me suggest too on Father's Day that the second part of our work is teaching morals. When I was growing up, my dad and mom did the best to teach us kids right from wrong. And I think that one of the best guides to teaching a child right from wrong goes all the way back to the Old Testament too, to the Ten Commandments. You know, used to, they'd post the Ten Commandments in schools, you know, sometimes in the classrooms. And of course that's gone today, along with prayer. But I've kind of wondered that what harm? But again, I'm not a legislature or someone else that has a say for that. Ten Commandments, still a good guide, although many think it's outdated. We know them. Children of Israel were wandering around in the desert, and they were a motley group of folks. They were not united in any way. And in no sense would they be able to fulfill God's promise to go into the promised land like they were. They were going to have to be united. They were going to have some structure. And so it was that Moses went up on the mountain. He got the commandments from God himself and came back down and said, this is the way that we're going to have to live. Two of them deal with their relationship with God, and the rest of them deal with a relationship with one another. The Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. That's the first thing. God. And that's the first thing that our children need to understand is there is a God. And there is only one God. And this again goes against a lot of things in our society today. And said, goes on, don't make yourself an idol. Well, that might seem a little bit outdated, but an idol is anything that we put before God. And we still have idols today. Idols of money, power, prestige. Some people worship these, and that's their quest in life. The commandment says, worship God alone and nothing else. Commandment goes on, you shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God. I like the King James. Shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. I know today that this is this is common language for a lot of people. They take God's name in vain on a very regular and frequent basis. I make a distinction between profanity and bad language. I'm not saying bad language is good, but profanity comes to a different level. Little boy was sold a lawnmower to the preacher, and he was pulling on it, trying to get it to start. And little boy said, "You have to cuss it a little bit." And preacher said, "When I became a Christian and preacher, I forgot those words." Little boy responded, "If you pull on it long enough, they'll come back to you." Now, every time I hear God's name taken in vain, I cringe. The most precious name in the world, the only name whereby we might be saved, taken so frivolously. And I know I'm talking about a lot of folks, and I'm not sure how to handle that, except to say that this really shouldn't happen. I was watching a little movie, and if you want to hear language, you watch a movie today, box office movie, and they're filled with bad language and certainly profanity. Watching a little movie called Annie. Have you ever seen that? It's a nice little movie for kids, and it got right down to the very last thing. And I don't know where they cut it out when you watched it, but the very last scene, the adult main character took the name of God in vain. You know, that bothers me. And it bothers me when young children are exposed to these kind of things. I don't know. I guess I'm getting old-fashioned. And I am getting old. But we need to watch our language. Now, granted, confession time, if I pull on that lawnmower long enough, I pull on that cord long enough, sometimes I've got a few words that come out. They come back. It's not profanity, but it's certainly not good. Working on the car when my mom was alive out under the carport. And guys, I don't know whether you work on cars or not, but I had worked on that thing and underneath my knuckles were bleeding and I was hot, and I was using a few choice words. Mom came to the door and she unbridled me for my language. I said, "Mom, go in the house." Go in the house. I'm not a prude, but again, the kind of language that is commonplace today is not right for a Christian. Remember the seventh day and keep it holy. I was driving over here just short distance. I remember seventh day mowing the yard, guys mowing the yard and working outside. I think we need to say that there is a difference on the Lord's Day, that we try to be in church or in Sunday school and not just doing our regular jobs or take advantage of a day off and do things that we don't have time to do throughout the week. I know my own dad. I love him dearly, but sometimes he'd get out there and mow the yard. We'd go to church, but he'd mow the yard after he got home. He was gone most of the week. And, he didn't have time, so he did what he could. Then the commandment goes down to honor your father and your mother. Again, that seems to be, basic. In a loving, caring family, you want to honor your mother and father. But again, we live in a day and a time in which there's not much honor by children for their mother or their father, and that's sad. Shall not commit adultery. When they're old enough, we need to talk to our kids about marriage and family, sexual relationships. Father got his little boy, was going to talk to him about the birds and the bees, and got in the room with him and said, "Son," said, "we're going to have a discussion here. We're going to talk about sexual relationships." The little boy responded, "Okay, Dad, what do you want to know?" I tell you, kids today know more about this subject than I did when I was growing up an adult. We need to teach them about those subjects, or somebody else will. And normally the world or the ideas they get from movies or television programs, they're going to pick up on that. Shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Shall not lie. In basic society, we make this a point that you do not lie to one another, especially as children. We need to teach that young that they need to be truthful. Thou shalt not steal. Almost left that one out, didn't I? See on television, kids running into a department store with a hammer and breaking the glass cabinet and stealing what's there. That's a sad commentary on our society. People need to know that it's wrong to steal. Shall not kill. that one bothers me. Every week we see on national news all kinds of killings in churches, synagogues, department stores, places of business, just mass murder. I don't know what the answer is. Of course, they talk about gun control and mental health issues. Make your own choice as to whether they are a deterrent or not. But I'd say that at least part of the problem goes all the way back to childhood. They have not learned to respect the sanctity of life. Again, in the good old days when I was growing up, kids might have problems and resolve their differences behind the gym. During those days, every kid carried a pocket knife, to play mumbly peg. You know what mumbly peg is? Some do. And but in those days, nobody ever drew a knife. It was a few fists flying, a little bit of wrestling, and a little bit of language, and that was it. But not today. They come back armed with a weapon. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that this is something that parents, society needs to teach our children. Don't covet anything that your neighbor has. Be content with what you got. That's not just a child thing, but an adult thing too. We want always a little bit more of what somebody else has. And never be content with what God has blessed us with. Well, I've gone through commandments, and you get the idea that children need a framework. They do need limits on their behavior. And if they don't have them, it bodes ill for our families and certainly for our society. The passage from Luke is about the prodigal son. And I included this to point out that sometimes we can do our best to raise our families and they still go the wrong way. Adam and Eve had two boys. They had problems. Solomon in Proverbs said what? Raise up a child in which they should go and they'll not depart from it. Have you heard that? Well, as a general rule, that's the case. But the bottom line is we're like Adam and Eve. We have a choice. When our children grow up, they have a choice to either adopt our faith and our values or go their own way. Prodigal son, no doubt raised in a good home. But yet, he went his own way and squandered everything he had in riotous living. And we have kids like that today. And perhaps maybe we have had our little spells too in our growing up. But a part of that passage is a turning point. It says the prodigal son came to himself, and that's what we hope, that our wayward sons or daughters will come to themselves and come back home. That's our hope. That's our prayer. It tells us not to give up. It tells us that our arms are to be wide open to forgive them and accept them back home. I remember a little clip of a young lady on the telephone, and she was talking either to her mom or dad, and she was pleading to come home. She left, run away. And she had now run out of money, was pregnant, and her life was in a mess. And she was asking her, either her father or mother on the phone, can I come home? And her response on the phone, you made your bed, lie in it. That's not the Christian way. We should be forgiving and loving. Last thing I'd like to say is the importance of our words to our kids. Fred Craddock, I don't know whether you've ever heard that name or not. In preacher circles, he was quite a preacher. He published many sermons and books and articles. And one day he was doing a lecture at Yale University, and told this story. He said he and his wife took a vacation, and they went down to Gatlinburg to spend some time together, just the two of them. And said while they were there, one evening, they went to a little restaurant kind of out of the way where just the two of them could have some time together. They ordered their meal, and as they were waiting, there was this older white-haired man that was going from table to table to table, greeting the folks. Craddock thought to himself and whispered to his wife, I hope he doesn't come over here. But in time, he did make his way over to Fred Craddock's table. He said, where are you folks from? Craddock said, we're from Oklahoma. Oh, the man said brightly, said, I've never been to Oklahoma, but I heard it's a nice state. What do you do for a living? You've run into people like that, haven't you? What do you do for a living? He said, I teach homiletics, which is preaching. He said, I teach homiletics at Phillips University. Oh, said the old man, you teach preachers. And The old man said, "I've got a story for you." Craddock cringed on the inside. Said, not another preacher story." But anyway, he was kind of nice and let the man continue. And the man said, I was born just a few miles over from here. And said, when I was born, said, I was born and Mom didn't have a husband. And said, when I was growing up, said, life was hard for me as a kid. Said I'd go to school and kids would call me some ugly names. So I sat by myself whenever lunchtime came, and at recess, I wouldn't play with the other kids because of what they were saying. And said when I'd go to town, said I could feel like every eye was on me. And said one day there was a new preacher came to our church. He said I'd always come in late and leave early, kind of like I do sometimes. Said I didn't want to go out with the congregation knowing what they might say. He said, but the new preacher, one Sunday, had a quick benediction. And he said I couldn't get out in time. So I had to go out with the rest of the congregation. He said I got up to the preacher and I felt a hand on my shoulder. He looked down at me and said, who are you? Whose son are you? And the man felt crushed. All the old hurt came back. In a moment he looked at the boy again and he said, I know who you are. I see the family resemblance. You're a child of God. He slapped him on the rump. He said, you have a great inheritance. Go out and claim it. Man said, those were the most important words that were ever said to me. The man, Ben Hooper, shook hands with Craddock and his wife and left another table. Ben Hooper, Craddock thought. Where have I heard that name? Then it came. Ben Hooper had been governor of the state of Tennessee. You know, just one word made a great change in that young boy's life. We never know what our words will mean to our children, our grandchildren, or maybe a neighbor. Well, perhaps I've gotten too long. My dad, whenever I was preaching young, I tended to get too winded. He sat in the back and he had a pocket watch. He'd swing it back and forth. And I knew what that meant. I knew what that meant. Today, remember our dads and how much they did for us, what they taught us, and encourage us to be good dads for our children and our grandchildren. Amen? Amen.